So tilting the game board towards bidding up these safe and liquid assets, which are the debt or equities of the largest institutions, this has to be contributing to wealth disparity, I would assume. I mean,
oh, tremendously. That's really, this focus on equality, especially from left-wing politicians, is, there's a good basis for it. There's a fundamental explanation for it. It's just not what everybody says.
yeah,
Everybody looks at the Fed and says they're printing money and it's all going to the wealthy. Well, what's really happening, as I just said, the stock market goes up, which mostly increases the wealth, or at least the paper wealth of wealthy persons,
yeah,
leaving everybody else out in the cold. Where the real inequality comes in is as stocks go up and paper wealth goes up in terms of wealthy people, real economic growth lags, which means people aren't working. And as people aren't working, the bottom tiers of society lag further and further and further behind to the point where the disparity between the stock price of paper wealth and the income potential at the bottom of the economy are so completely different. It's like you're looking at a different world, which then leads to all of these political and social consequences where people go, the system is rigged. We don't really know what's wrong, but we know it's wrong. It's
Right.
not getting any better. Therefore, why not try socialism? Because if this is capitalism and it's booming, we're not seeing any of that. So let's
Right.
try something different anyway. But
And
that's really where inequality comes from. It comes from the lack of economic growth because of the depressionary and deflationary monetary conditions that are holding everything back. And it's not just the US. Let's be clear here. This is a phenomenon that you see time and again all over the world
Yes.
because this is a global reserve currency system. Therefore, its depressionary effects are spread out globally.
Yeah.
And ironically, the Chinese are the ones that are going most towards socialism because they've realized there's no escape from the system. So they've ditched their capitalist phase and they're going back into a Maoist phase again because what's the point? There's no economic growth to be had here.
Wow. So, I mean, it's deceptive once again, because you have people upset thinking this is capitalism, but it's in fact the lack of capitalism to some extent. I mean, a lot of these policy measures, they're not capitalistic at all. They're even anti-capitalistic, right? Anti-competitive and whatnot. So,
yeah, and look, you go back to 2008, the capitalist free market solution would have been let the system kind of get worse
yeah,
so that it would clear out all the bad parts of it. Instead, the QEs were designed to maintain the status quo with the hope that by manipulating psychology, everything would go back to normal. That's really what QE was. This is placating, the upset public and financial markets into believing that don't worry about it. We've printed a bunch of money. Therefore, things will go back to normal in a short period of time. It really was just about buying time and manipulating emotion so that the contraction or the crisis would end and then recovery would take hold and then everything would go back to normal. But if you're looking at the system the way it actually is, you realize that wasn't going to happen because 2008 was a systemic rupture or permanent rupture, and therefore there was no recovery potential. So what's the point of trying to buy time when you don't have any more time because everything has changed? And that's where you get into inequality again and everything else, because it's really about banks, not central banks. And that's really the hardest thing to overcome intellectually. That's the biggest intellectual leap to make. Because again, everything we're taught, everything we're told in the financial media, everybody says the Fed prints money. And it's hard to get around the fact that might not even be true.